Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's been exactly a year to the day since I did my original video for this channel, and it was a book ranking video of all the books I'd read from the middle of 2024 through 2025. And so I thought I would do that again. I think I was going to keep the cadence of mid-year. I know a lot of people release these at the end of year, but I'm going to try mid-year. You can watch that previous video to get a background on how I got here, why I made the channel, and all that. Well, I'm just going to go get right into this year's ranking video. This year's video covers 32 books and almost 13,000 pages. That's up from last year's like roughly 20 and 8 to 9,000 pages. A couple points about how I do my ranking. So I use the S through E. The thing about my ranking is the letters don't equate to like grades in a classroom. Any ranking I would give other than an E would be a book that I would recommend reading, and an E would be the only case where I would have reasons for not reading that book. So at the end of the video, after I've ranked all my books, I will pick my S plus book, which we'll call it the 6-star book. That book will be, if I had only to pick one from the entire set of books I read from the previous year, what would it have been? Another thing about my ranking, it's going to be pretty brief comments on each book and no spoilers. And I definitely have biases. I prefer military history and sci-fi. Those are going to probably get more leverage in my ranking. It's just the way it is. This is my enjoyment scale ranking for me, not necessarily for others. So if you share my interests as you watch my videos, learn more about me over time, then you can count on this ranking more for yourself. All right, having said that, let's get into the meat of this thing. All right, here we have my ranking board. Another note about this. So we're going to do these in order that I read them throughout the year. And this is from July 1st, 2025 through the end of June 2026. First up, published in 1932, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. This one, enjoyment factor, kind of set right in the middle. So, and that's still, again, that's an average, strong, recommended read. I just found I wasn't quite as engaged in it as I was with other books you'll see ahead of this. Basically mocking H.G. Wells with 1984. So these two books kind of hammered at each other. The authors did. And if you read both of them, you can get a sense of how different they are. The one being more optimistic than the other. Moving on. Second book of the ranking, Fellowship of the Ring, which everyone knows that I love Tolkien. Well, maybe you don't, but now you do. So, Fellowship of the Ring, S tier. Not a whole lot I need to say here for fantasy lovers. This is one of the founding trilogies of the fantasy genre. Right, next up, another fantasy book. Now, this one was recommended to me by my son, and I feel bad because for me, I just did not get into this series. I did end up reading the entire series, and this one, I wouldn't say I was bored with it, just maybe not my style. Maybe because I came off of Tolkien writing straight into this one. I still would recommend it. So, fantasy lovers, you're probably going to rate this a couple stars higher than I would. I'm finding more and more fantasy is not my even my top two genres, military history and sci-fi, are lead the pack for me. And probably classics and probably fantasy is like fourth on my list now. I'm like kind of learning this as I go. That was published in 2016, and Back to Fellowship of the Ring hit 1954. Next up, an oldie but a goodie from 1818. We have Shelley's Frankenstein. Absolutely love this book, and easily could be an S plus book at the end of this review or this ranking. Now, the movies, I did watch one of the most recent movies. I think it was an independent film, maybe, on Frankenstein, and it came closer than any of the other Frankenstein movies I've seen. Some of them are almost comical in nature in terms of how they are done versus the book itself. But it was just fantastic. I couldn't put this down. I was on a getaway trip at the time, and I literally read this thing probably 3 hours straight up pop until I finished it. So S tier for that. Next up, classic side, Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises. I have this at B. Hemingway is probably more of a reach for me in terms of what I like to read, but I'm trying to branch out and get classics involved in my reading. Still a really good book. Classic readers probably would rank this higher than I do. Thoroughly enjoyed it and definitely worth reading. And Sun Also Rises, published in 1926. Next up, Red Rising, published in 2014. Absolutely love this book. I have not read any more in the series yet, but I will be. And for me, this is S tier as well. Again, sci-fi. I love sci-fi, so it's gonna get a little biased on this ranking scale. Next up, again, 1954, second book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And then one more note: I have read the entire series years ago. So, The Two Towers. Two Towers, I like the entire series, but The Two Towers, start getting bogged down a little bit. And so I give it an A because the writing and story is still as good as the first book. But I just don't know. The first book I enjoy more. Therefore, I feel like Two Towers goes a little bit lower for me. Now, in the movie, The Two Towers was my favorite of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings series. So at this point, I was deep into Lord of the Rings and obviously pushing forward with that. So in 1955, a year after the other two were published, came the third of the Lord of the Rings set. And I have this one also as an A. In terms of reading the book, it was my least favorite of the three. Movie-wise, it was my second favorite, and followed by Fellowship as my third favorite movie-wise. All right, so obviously military history. Haven't seen one yet. Y'all know I probably favor that above most of my other reading. First one out of the gate on the ranking that is going to surprise people. It's going to be a B. It's Stephen Ambrose, Citizen Soldiers. This book is second in a series. He followed up D-Day on. The reason why I ranked this one much lower than D-Day, I had it as an S, I think, in the last video, is because it just felt like Ambrose got a little lazy with his research, and the interviews that came from the people were just not as succinct, not as detailed, not as connected, and I just didn't find it as much of a page turner as the original D-Day. And it was published in 1997. All right, next up, another classic. This is from 1960. Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. All right, this is S tier material. Don't need to explain why. Those of you who have read this, classic fans out there, pretty quick read. One that I think everybody should read at least once. Next up, back to sci-fi. Another S tier book, Ender's Game. Now, for whatever reason, this should have been one I've read many, many years ago, and it's been on my list for quite a while. And I finally got around to it, and of course, it's S tier. Sci-fi fans out there, unless you have a specific type of sci-fi you like, would probably agree with me. This is an S tier book. You can sort of, when you're reading it, predict the twists in it, though quite frankly, I was enjoying it so much that I wasn't thinking about it and wasn't trying to puzzle it out in the back of my mind. And when those twists hit, it made it even more enjoyable for me because I could just watch it unfold and not have pre-calculated it. So very, very entertaining book. And that was from 1985. All right. Second in the Tim Akers series, we had The Pagan Night. I finally got around to second in this trilogy, which was The Iron Hound. And no surprise, I think I enjoyed this a little bit more than the first book. This one was released and published in 2017. It does have a very unique background for, as much fantasy as I've read. I was not finding myself connecting as well with the various faiths that were competing against each other. It didn't kind of catch me very well. So, I got through it, and it's still, for your fantasy lovers, probably going to rate higher. Next up, second military history book coming in here. This one was absolutely fantastic. In Harm's Way by Doug Stanton. This one is published in 2001. It's a fairly quick read. It was definitely a page turner for me. And I am going to put this as an A. I probably could have easily have boosted it higher, but when I look at the books I have above it versus it, like if I had to pick, I probably would, pick one of those ahead of it. Next up is more of an adventure story. And this book I don't think is as well known. It is a very, relatively new book. The Wager, published in 2023 by David Gran. This is a true story of survival and multiple groups of people who, let's say, start off on the same boat, but they separate for different reasons and eventually all come back together at the end of the story. And it's got multiple twists and turns. And I love, I'm sure things are embellished, but I really love true stories on nonfiction accounts of survival and things of that nature. So I'll put this at an A. I could easily have gone higher with this one as well. This is a book my daughter picked out for me, and she did a fantastic job. Next up, I have another sci-fi. It's the first of the Martha Wells Murderbot series. And these are really short reads. I am planning on reading more of them. This one's called All Systems Red, published in 2017. I thoroughly enjoyed this. We're going to put this at B. Again, there's a lot of competition here. This could easily have been higher. You can argue it could have been lower. But for me, I really enjoyed it. It was not a complicated book, pure storytelling, and thoroughly enjoyed it. All right, now published in 2018, the follow-up, the third and final of the Tim Akers series. This one, I'm going to surprise everybody, I ended up liking more than the other two. Maybe the whole storyline started to grow on me over time. So the Winter Vow I have as a C. Next up, Matthew Roselle's another military history book, published in 2015. This is I'll call it a Ambrose acolyte because I think he's heavily influenced by that genre of writing. And this is one of his first books. It's The Things Our Fathers Saw, published in 2015. And this is specifically called Voices of the Pacific Theater. There's a whole series of these. For this first one, it's starting off, we're going to go with B. Now, the reason why I'm going to go with B, and it's obvious this is one of his first books, I'm thinking they probably will improve, but it's just a little more green versus a Cornelius Ryan or an Ambrose in terms of the content. I do love the concept. Well, this is a lot of research went in to bring in actual quotes of military folks, serving in various theaters of action. And I think he did a good job. Just not quite as gripping. I would probably put this a little bit below Citizen Soldiers, even though they're on the same line. I'm looking forward to reading more of these and just seeing where he takes it. And next up, we have a classic, another one. So we had Frankenstein earlier. Well, from 1897, we now have Dracula. Now, this one could easily have made an S tier, but I just found Shelley's writing, and given the little time that she took to write her book, how phenomenal it was, I just didn't feel like the Dracula story how the writing was done was quite as good. It was still a page turner, and I couldn't put it down. So, like, this is an S/A book for me. Next up, another sci-fi. Okay, from 1953, Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End. Now, this one I struggle with because there's times where I'm like, this is an S book, this is an A book. I'm gonna make myself put it in S just because could immediately told my wife she needed to read this book. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So we're gonna put it there. We'll force it there. Could have been an A though. Next up, definitely S tier. Patrick Rothfuss's say that 3 times. Wise Man's Fear. This is the second book. This is a 1,000-pager too, and took a while. But at 1,000 pages, this is one of the easiest reads I've ever had of a 1,000-page book. I love this book. So we're going to place this also at S. The story is so well written, and I know everybody. There's just so many jokes out there about the third book, whether it's going to come or not, and I don't know. Maybe someone knows, and maybe it will come. I would definitely be prioritizing the third book if it comes out. That was published in 2011. All right, this next book, very controversial, military history book, was a gift given to me. So I feel a little bad about what I'm about to say because it was a gift, but the person that gave it to me does not read military history. And the book was from 2025. It was a very easy read called World War II, The Total Story. Now, this book is going to be an E. Now, here's why. It's not because of the enjoyment level of the book. When I first started reading this book, it was very educational, would I say. It covers the entire World War, all the highlights. It covers, the military leaders and the fronts and all the players and all the countries. And it's just like, it is a very educational book for someone who just wants to, scratch the surface, just get the highlights of the entire war. My problem is probably 20% in, I noticed some strange things about the writing, and it just started feeling like I couldn't put my finger on it. And as I read more, I realized, this must have been written with AI. And then I found some trailing prompt artifacts at the end of chapters, and which pretty much confirmed to me. And I'm probably going to put a review video about this book because of this whole topic about AI writing and all that. I found like there's missing copyright stuff in the book. None of the photographs are credited to their photographers. And like AI, it repeats itself in different ways within chapters. It's like it comes back over top of some of the material, that's why it took me about 20% of the book to kind of hone in on this, because as it kind of went back to areas that overlapped other areas in the wars, it started saying, like, repeating itself with slightly different sentences. So I did finish the entire book because I wanted to kind of learn about how the AI written version kind of played out. I will say it seemed factually accurate in terms of what was portrayed. And if it weren't written by AI, this would probably be a C or B book. But I am not a supporter of, especially what I'll call the potential copyright infringement of the photography, and that, someone's just making money off of AI generated text and not writing it for themselves. All right, next up. This is like a sci-fi book published in 2022. Neil deGrasse Tyson's Starry Messenger. And when I say it's sort of like a sci-fi, it's not like a story. It's more of a dialogue. And I found that I did enjoy it. Maybe not as much as I was hoping. I'm going to rank this as a B. People know Neil deGrasse Tyson are aware of, maybe some of his other books and, how he likes to educate folks. This is definitely worth a read. All right after that, also published in 2022 as Starry Messenger was, Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. Now, this is a true sci-fi story, and I did enjoy it. It's a little strange, a little more of the psychological type books or philosophical type books, as you know, many sci-fi are. But parts of it, I rank it a B because parts of it, moved fairly smoothly, and I was enthralled with the book, we'll say. And then there are ruts in the book where I'm just like, oh, I need to get to better part of this book. But solid B. Next up, published in 2011. Now, those of you who know me are probably shocked when I put this book on screen. And it is because the story told by this writer, famous writer, is not the normal normal type of topic that they would write about. And so I thought I'd give it a try. It's Stephen King's 11/22/63. This book, for me, I'm not I'll just say right up front, I'm not a Stephen King fan. I love his ideas. There are a few books of his that I've enjoyed. I don't tend to read his books because I find he's just way too wordy for me. In the case of this book, the same thing. It's just like this book is way too long for what it is. And, it's in the classic Stephen King style. We're going to get paragraphs and paragraphs about the scene before we actually get to what's going on in the scene. And maybe it's just me, but I stuck with it. I did like the plot line of the whole story. And again, a D on my scale is still recommended read, but I don't know. I'm leery of reading more Stephen King. Next up, David Sanderson, which you all know I had the Way of Kings within last year's rankings, and I'm going to get back to the rest of that series here soon this year. But the first in the Mistborn series was one I started and completed, published in 2006, The Final Empire. And this, for me, is definitely an S. The opening scene alone had my attention, and I couldn't put it down for quite some time. Now, this whole series, I don't like it as much as Way of Kings, I can already tell. But it's a much shorter read. It's like half the length of the Stormlight series. So if you want something that's a little more digestible, if you don't like tomes like the Way of Kings and others in that series are, then I would recommend this. Next up, The Longest Day. Now, military history, Cornelius Ryan. I'm not sure I've read other Cornelius Ryan's books yet, but this book was fantastic. Easily an S tier book. No wavering. I mean, this is not A at all. This is S tier, and I put it above Ambrose's D-Day. Ambrose has got claims against him from others once he passed away. People talking about when he wrote D-Day, he didn't give credit to all of the different sources he had, but that's not really the main factor why I put this above. The writing, the research, and the style, and the how close Ryan was in the time period. He wrote this within 10 years of D-Day, which means he had access to live participants, and he traveled abroad to talk to people like in Germany, and he put out a full ad to get people to expand his research so broadly that when this thing was put together, he required multiple sources in order to fact check anything he put into the book. So this is like set a new standard in journalism and writing. And he was a journalist during D-Day and flew over D-Day I think with one of the bomber planes or missions. So he was really close to the whole thing, and you can tell. Outstanding book. That was published in 1959, like I was saying, within 10 or 15 years. Now he took like 5 years to write it, so he started writing it within 10 years of D-Day and finished it in 1959. It's a quick read too. It's only 300 some pages. Next up is a recommendation from my daughter, which is a famous book by Jose Saramago. I get that right? Blindness. This one comes off of my classic tier. And this is for me, a solid A. Now, those of you who are a huge fan of this, you could say that's an S. Those of you maybe not as much of a classics reader or one of these more of these niche writings, I would call them niche writings, might push this lower. Me, solid A, and it was definitely a page turner. Again, it could have easily been a little bit higher. And that was published in 1995. All right, coming in from 1968, a year after my birth. Arthur C. Clarke again on the list with 2001. I've watched the movie I don't know how many times. Now, the movie and the book kind of went hand in hand. When the movie was being made, Clarke was involved with Kubrick and others while they were making the movie and highly influenced the writing. He was basically being dictated to on how certain things needed to happen and or turn out in terms of the feel of the direction of the book itself. It would be interesting to have seen how different things would have been if that didn't occur. I have 2001 as a solid B. I actually preferred the movie more, and maybe it's because the visual elements were made it more easy to understand what was going on versus having to write about those things could be a little bit of a challenge, and it just wasn't as gripping as I thought it would be, with having been a junkie of the movie, a follower of the movie. All right, published in 2007, another fantasy. Brandon Sanderson's second in the Mistborn series. We have The Well of Ascension. Now, this one, I had the first one as an S, but this one I was not quite as excited about. I felt like maybe not repetitive, but just a little like dwelling on some of the same themes or it was getting a little stale for me in here. Still enjoyed it though. Wasn't quite as much of as a page turner as the other. And I could even argue this would be a B for me. I mean, it's kind of a weak A for me, but definitely fantasy readers will disagree with me. I'm sure because fantasy is not my favorite genre, but I do dip into it quite a bit. Next up, another old classic, Leo Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Illich. Say that 5 times as well. This book, if you're wanting to read Tolstoy, you feel like hey, do I like this or not? Want to be you're interested in it. This is a great book to start with if you want to try it out. Now, I have this as an S tier, probably leaning more toward an A. Very short. So there's 80 some pages. It's just not your normal story and gets you thinking and just very stark in nature in terms of the how it plays out. But definitely recommend this. It's a quick read. Next up, I was really, really looking forward to this one because I like this author and thought this was going to be a killer one for me. Ursula Guin's The Dispossessed. I was disappointed for myself. Let's just say I know this book gets a lot of acclaim. Maybe it's because the philosophy and the psychology, psychology and all of the hidden meanings and complexities of relationships and everything that are baked into this book don't resonate with me as much, but everyone's going to have this rated as an S or an A. For me, it's more of a B, leaning toward an A. And I would, if I look at the books ahead of it, I would want to read one of those first ahead of this in retrospect. So that's why I have it as a B. And that was written in 1974, by the way, first little bit. And last but not least, now this is a strange one. Written in 180 AD is Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. This is also a B, and I'm going to stop here for a second to explain. Like, one, this is not a story. If you're someone who's exploring Stoicism or wanting to learn about Stoicism, this was his personal journal and writings he had that was eventually published after his death, and it really follows Stoicism, the views of a Stoic. And so what I did was I was interested in this topic, so I would read a little bit of this, every other night over the course of time while I was doing my other readings, and eventually I finished it. I drew upon several quotes in there over time, and I would talk to my wife about them briefly, and just found it very insightful for my own personal journey through life. So I would recommend it for that reason. Don't pick this up if you're looking for a story, more of a self-help book, and definitely recommended. All right, so we're at the end of the rank. That's all of my books. So now we're at the point where if I could only pick one of these books to read, knowing where they stood. Obviously, it's going to come from my S tier. Might not be any surprise. I really lean heavily into military history and sci-fi, but because of the way this person evolved journalism and writing and how well this book is written, the S tier goes to Cornelius Ryan and The Longest Day. And I think, hot on the tail was Frankenstein and maybe Ender's Game. If I were going to say best classic, best sci-fi, and fantasy would be Fellowship of the Ring for the best fantasy. Those were the four in contention. But in the end, we're going to give it to Cornelius Ryan, Longest Day. Well, that's a wrap for this year's book ranking. I have a goal of 52 books for this year, 2026, which means going into next year's book ranking, I should be hopefully going closer toward the 40 and 50 book mark. So if you like these videos and want to learn more about my interest in reading and are aligned with that, then follow along. I also do and will be doing more 5-minute book reviews. Look for those in the future. I have a few out there, which include some of the books on this list already. So with that, thanks everybody for watching. If you like what you viewed, like and subscribe. Till next time, take care.